She dated Donald O'Connor in secret. Now we know the reason why Lana Turner was born. Julia Jean Mildred Frances Turner on February 8, 1921, in Wallace, Idaho. From a small-town girl with a troubled past, her father was murdered when she was a child, and she moved with her mother to California seeking a better life. Lana would emerge as a silver screen goddess whose beauty, sensuality, and complex persona captivated audiences around the world. Turner's breakthrough came in 1937 with a small but unforgettable role in They Won't Forget, where she played a teenage murder victim. It was in this film that she wore a tight sweater, earning her the nickname the Sweater Girl, and instantly becoming a national sex symbol. But Lana was much more than just a pin-up or fashion icon. She was a committed and evolving actress who gradually took on more challenging and emotionally nuanced roles, culminating in some of her most acclaimed performances in films like The Postman Always Rings Twice, 1946, where her portrayal of a femme fatale opposite John Garfield remains one of the most riveting and influential performances in the history of film noir. Her ability to blend vulnerability with manipulative charm made her a master of the genre and set a precedent for many actresses who followed. Throughout the 1940s and 1950s, Turner worked with some of the greatest directors and leading men of her time, starring in hits such as Ziegfeld Girl, 1941, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, 1941, Slightly Dangerous, 1943, and the lush Technicolor melodrama Imitation of Life, 1959. The latter film, in which she played a struggling actress and mother, showcased not just her beauty, but also her emotional range and depth as a performer. The movie was a box office triumph and remains one of her most enduring works, resonating with audiences for its themes of race, motherhood, and personal sacrifice. In the 1960s and 1970s, although the roles diminished in frequency and prestige, Turner remained a compelling figure in both film and television. She appeared in films like Madame X, 1966, for which she received a Golden Globe nomination, and later in popular TV shows such as Falcon Crest. She also embarked on successful stage tours and public speaking engagements, proving her versatility and staying power in an industry notorious for its fleeting attention span. Lana Turner, one of Hollywood's most glamorous and iconic stars of the Golden Age, was as well known for her turbulent personal life as she was for her screen presence. Over the course of her lifetime, she entered into 8 marriages with 7 different men, a pattern that became emblematic of both the passionate intensity and the romantic instability that characterized much of her off-screen life. Despite her fame and beauty, Turner's quest for lasting love proved elusive. Her husbands included bandleader Artie Shaw, actor Lex Barker, and restaurateur Stephen Crane, whom she married twice, along with several others who were drawn to her allure but ultimately failed to bring her the domestic happiness she craved. Reflecting later in life on the contrast between her youthful dreams and her actual experiences, Turner delivered one of her most famous and poignant quotes. "My goal was to have 1 husband and 7 children, but it turned out to be the other way around." This remark encapsulated the irony and heartbreak that so often accompanied her search for stability amid the glamour and chaos of Hollywood. Perhaps the most sensational and tragic episode in Turner's personal life occurred in 1958 in an event that captured the nation's attention and permanently altered her public image. At the center of the scandal was Johnny Stompanato, a former U.S. Marine who had become a bodyguard and enforcer for notorious mobster Mickey Cohen. Stompanato had been romantically involved with Turner, but their relationship was infamously volatile and marked by allegations of emotional abuse and physical violence. On the night of April 4, 1958, during a particularly heated argument between Turner and Stompanato in her Beverly Hills home, her teenage daughter Cheryl Crane, who was only 14 years old at the time, intervened. Fearing for her mother's life and safety, Cheryl retrieved a kitchen knife and stabbed Stompanato in what she later described as an act of protection. Stompanato died from the wound shortly afterward, and the incident erupted into a media firestorm, making front-page headlines across the country. The ensuing legal and public fallout was immense. A highly publicized coroner's inquest followed, during which Lana Turner gave an emotional testimony that riveted the public and swayed public sympathy in her favor. Cheryl's act was ultimately ruled a justifiable homicide, meaning no charges were filed against her, as the authorities concluded that she had acted in defense of her mother. While Turner was legally cleared, the incident left an indelible mark on her life and career. Public fascination with the murder, and the image of a beautiful, tearful Turner on the witness stand cemented her status as a tragic Hollywood figure, a star whose personal demons often seemed to rival those of the characters she played on screen. In the years that followed, Turner remained active in film and television, though she was forever shadowed by the scandal and the emotional toll it took on both her and her daughter. The murder of Johnny Stompanato and its surrounding circumstances became one of the most infamous episodes in Hollywood history, an enduring story of glamour, violence, maternal instinct, and personal tragedy that further blurred the line between Lana Turner's cinematic roles and her real life. In the golden era of Hollywood, where studio heads wielded nearly unchecked control over their stars and public image was as carefully choreographed as a Busby Berkeley number, some love affairs bloomed in the shadows. One such clandestine romance involved two beloved icons of the silver screen: the glamorous Lana Turner and the endlessly charming song and dance man Donald O'Connor. For decades, whispers circulated about a brief but passionate love affair between the two during the early 1950s. But it was only years later, after both stars had passed their peak fame, that the truth began to emerge. Not only had they dated, but they had kept it deliberately hidden from the public eye. The reason, as it turns out, was as complex as Hollywood itself. At the time, Lana Turner was one of the most recognizable faces in America. Famous for her sultry beauty and a string of high-profile relationships, she was no stranger to headlines. Donald O'Connor, by contrast, was known for his boyish charm, impeccable comedic timing, and extraordinary dancing talent, immortalized in films like Singin' in the Rain. He was beloved by family audiences and seen as clean-cut and wholesome, the kind of performer mothers trusted and daughters adored. But that contrast, the femme fatale and the boy next door, was exactly what made their relationship both electrifying and, in the eyes of studio executives, potentially disastrous. The MGM publicity machine had carefully crafted Lana's image as a dramatic siren, a woman whose life mirrored the high-octane passion of her films. Meanwhile, O'Connor's brand was built on light-hearted comedy and traditional values. A serious romance between them would have clashed with the public personas that had taken years and millions of studio dollars to construct. According to close friends and former studio insiders who later spoke out, the affair began during the filming of a variety show appearance where both were scheduled to perform. Lana was taken with Donald's gentle wit and humility, qualities that stood in stark contrast to the possessive, volatile men she had often dated in the past. Donald, for his part, admired Lana's strength and vulnerability beneath the glossy surface. They found in each other a rare kind of comfort, a sense of being understood away from the camera's glare. But as their connection deepened, pressure mounted. Lana was in the midst of navigating personal chaos. Her stormy relationships, including with abusive gangster Johnny Stompanato, had already made tabloid fodder. Donald was under contract and feared the wrath of his studio, which had strict morality clauses and viewed any inappropriate relationship as a threat to box office appeal. Even more complicated was the fact that both had children and reputations they were trying to protect from scandal. A public romance could have jeopardized everything, from endorsement deals to their very careers. So they met in secret, Dinner dates in private homes, walks taken after dark, letters exchanged with no names signed. Their moments together were fleeting, but deeply felt. According to later accounts from Lana's daughter, Cheryl Crane, and O'Connor's biographer, there were nights when Lana would drive out to Donald's place just to talk for hours in the car, parked where no one would see. It was romantic, yes, but also suffused with a sense of sadness. Two people who felt they couldn't fully be together in the light of day. The relationship, ultimately, couldn't survive the weight of secrecy. Both stars had commitments and careers pulling them in different directions, and the pressure of staying hidden took its toll. They quietly ended things, agreeing never to speak of it publicly. But the tenderness lingered. Years later, when asked in an interview about the one who got away, O'Connor reportedly paused and smiled wistfully, refusing to name names. Lana, when pressed about her many love affairs, once remarked cryptically, "There was someone who truly saw me for who I was, but not all stories are meant for the press." It wasn't until long after both had stepped away from the spotlight that former associates began to piece together the fragments of their secret romance. Studio memos, correspondence, and whispered recollections from Hollywood insiders finally confirmed what fans had long suspected. What began as a quiet connection away from the cameras became one of the most touching, untold love stories of classic Hollywood. A fleeting romance born not out of publicity, but in spite of it. In an industry built on illusion, Lana Turner and Donald O'Connor shared something beautifully real. And though it lived only in the margins of their biographies, it now stands as a poignant reminder of the sacrifices stars made for the sake of image and of the love that sometimes had to bloom in the shadows. Throughout her glamorous but often tumultuous life, Lana Turner maintained certain personal habits that, while common in the Hollywood culture of her era, would ultimately take a toll on her health. For decades, Turner was known to be a regular drinker and a habitual cigarette smoker, vices that were deeply embedded in both the social fabric of the film industry and her personal lifestyle. As one of MGM's brightest stars during the golden age of Hollywood, her public image was meticulously crafted to reflect elegance and perfection. Behind the scenes, however, studio executives were constantly working to protect that image. In fact, during her years under contract with Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, any photographs that captured Turner with a cigarette in hand were carefully airbrushed to remove the offending item, an early example of public relations damage control. At a time when smoking was widespread and even fashionable, especially among film stars, the studio feared that such images could tarnish her wholesome or glamorous persona, particularly among younger fans. As Turner entered her early 60s, a period in which many celebrities begin to reevaluate their lifestyles, she made a deliberate decision to stop drinking, a choice motivated largely by health concerns and a desire to maintain some control over her aging body. However, the grip of nicotine addiction proved much harder to break. Despite numerous attempts and warnings from doctors, she was never able to quit smoking, a habit that had become deeply ingrained after decades of continuous use. The long-term effects of this addiction would manifest in devastating ways. In the spring of 1992, Turner received a diagnosis that would forever change the final chapter of her life: throat cancer. The news shocked both her fans and those closest to her, but in typical Lana Turner fashion, she responded with poise and defiance. In a press release that followed the diagnosis, Turner sought to reassure the public by stating that the cancer had been detected early and had not affected her vocal cords or larynx, a detail she made sure to emphasize, perhaps in part due to her identity as a screen legend whose voice had long been part of her allure. She underwent exploratory surgery in an effort to remove the malignant tissue, but despite the initial optimism, the operation revealed that the cancer had already metastasized, spreading from her throat to her jaw and lungs. The diagnosis marked a grim turn. Turner then began radiation therapy, a physically draining process made more difficult by her age and overall physical condition. Nonetheless, in early 1993, she surprised many by publicly announcing that she was in full remission, a declaration that inspired hope among fans and seemed to affirm her enduring strength and resilience. But the victory was short-lived. In July 1994, just over a year after her remission announcement, doctors confirmed that the cancer had returned. By then, the disease had advanced, and her health began to decline more noticeably. Despite her weakened state, Turner summoned the strength to make one last public appearance in September 1994, when she attended the San Sebastian International Film Festival in Spain, where she was honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award. The appearance was deeply emotional, both for Turner and the audiences who had adored her for decades. Though she had once been the very image of beauty and glamour, Turner now used a wheelchair for much of the event, a poignant symbol of the ravages of illness, but also of her courage to face the public in her vulnerable state. Her presence at the festival was a bittersweet farewell, as it would be the last time she was seen in public. On June 29, 1995, less than a year later, Lana Turner passed away at her home in Century City, Los Angeles, at the age of 74. The cause of death was listed as complications from cancer. At her bedside during her final moments was her only daughter, Cheryl Crane, who later described her mother's death as a total shock. Cheryl noted that Turner had recently completed 7 weeks of radiation therapy and had actually appeared to be in better health, raising hopes that she might once again defy the odds. Her sudden decline was therefore all the more heartbreaking. In her will, Lana Turner left specific instructions for the distribution of her estate, but its contents became the source of legal and emotional drama. While Cheryl Crane and her longtime partner Joyce Leroy, whom Turner had once described warmly as a second daughter, did receive some personal belongings and a sum of $50,000, the bulk of Turner's estate, estimated at $1.7 million, was left not to her family, but to Carmen Lopez Cruz, her devoted maid and caretaker of 45 years. Cruz had stood by Turner's side for nearly half a century and had been especially instrumental in caring for her during the final years of illness. Turner's decision to reward her loyalty in such a significant way reflected not just affection, but gratitude for a lifetime of service and companionship. However, this division of the estate did not go uncontested. Cheryl Crane challenged the will, likely feeling blindsided by what she perceived as a snub. The matter was further complicated when Cruz responded that a large portion of the estate had already been consumed by probate expenses, attorney fees, and the staggering costs of Turner's medical care, which had accumulated during her prolonged battle with cancer. The legal and financial wrangling that followed added a bittersweet note to the end of Turner's life. A woman who had lived in the spotlight for decades, but whose final days were marked by illness, fading fame, and the complexities of human relationships. Despite these challenges, Lana Turner remains an